was supposed to happen last night, which was the American Israeli attack on Iranian soil, which was supposed to hit all of these oil facilities, power grids in Iran, and destroy the whole infrastructure. Then we've seen last night Donald Trump coming out and saying, no, he has decided to cancel the attack because Iranians and Middle Eastern countries called him and wanted him to stop the attack or to cancel the attack. He wanted to attack Iran because Iran didn't, you know, he couldn't force Iran into some sort of position that he wanted them to be. And then he decided not to attack Iran because Iranians asked him not to attack. And Iranians, when I thought on the part of the Iranian government, you see a lot of preparations on Friday night because they were supposed to, receive this attack or to be attacked by the United States on Friday night, because they thought that if the United States decides to do that, it's going to be on Friday night, then Saturday night, and then because on Sunday night tonight, it's going to be the Asian market going to open. And that was the calculation on the part of Iranians. But that didn't happen, Pravin. And what is your understanding of what has happened?
Nima, what's happened is that, first of all, we all know that President Trump, he lies. Because the Iranians themselves have said that no deal has been reached at all with President Trump, and we haven't spoken to him. So when we look at the big picture, the problem here is that the Americans actually have no policy at all for the region. Therefore, there is no diplomacy at all. So what is happening is no negotiations, only the mediators are working. That's all between the two sides. And we know that the mediators are Pakistanis, the Turks are there, and the Qataris are there. Now, amongst these, obviously, Pakistan is at a much higher level because all the reports suggest that the Pakistan Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir, he is able to interact at the highest level, which is President Trump and which is the highest emissaries to the Iranian Supreme Leader, Mujtaba Khamenei. So we are talking about mediation, and this gives a lot of room to President Trump to lie. And that is precisely what he does. Now, coming to your main question, you see, the problem is that he still continues to believe. President Trump believes that he can scare the Iranians and get them to submission, which of course will not happen because there are far too many problems on his side. I will just list out about 3 problems there. The first is, of course, his personal problem that he does not want to be seen as a loser. That's his problem. And because he does not, and he himself said that I don't want to end up as a Herbert Hoover. So he does not want to be seen as a loser. So he is trying extremely hard to see if he can get the Strait of Hormuz to what it was before February 28th. And the recent reports that I read, they suggest that the Americans have come up with another plan. And that plan, which has been given to the Iranians, is that all the inbound vessels into that entire waterway, the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman, inbound vessels, they can go through the Iranian side, and the outbound vessels, they can't go through the Omani side. Now, reports say that this is under consideration, but in my assessment, the Iranians will not accept that. And the reason for that is simple. I believe that the Iranian objective right now in the war is to get the American forces out of West Asia. Because if you see Article 4 of the MOU, Article 4 talks about the American forces getting away from the proximity of Iran within 30 days. And when we talk of proximity of Iran, my interpretation is GCC countries. So if this is what the Iranians are looking at, the reason for that is simple. Why they want the Americans out. Because The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in March itself, your viewers would remember, he had traveled to Moscow, he met up with President Putin, and after that, he went to China, he met up with his counterpart Wang He. When he came back to Tehran, he spoke about the need for a new post war regional framework. So, this is the reason why they want the American forces to be out, because they are looking at a regional framework. Because that regional framework will be the definitive step towards then approaching the Palestinian issue. And Palestinian issue is at the core of the problem in West Asia. And today, because the world is multipolar, there is great possibility of this issue finally getting resolved. So this is one part, that he doesn't want to be seen as a loser. Now the second part is, it is very clear that he simply does not have the wherewithal to fight. Because right now we know that the biggest problem the Americans have is to protect Israel. Now, Israel Netanyahu, the prime minister, he was there in the White House. He met up with President Trump. He said he had a very good meeting with President Trump. And after that, on one of the news channels, he said that what we are looking for, implying he and President Trump, is that nuclear weapons, that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. In my assessment, only he's looking at, not President Trump. President Trump simply wants the Hormuz to be free because his worry is petrodollars, and he does not want to be seen as a loser, because petrodollars is at the heart of the American empire. So the problem of the Israelis is entirely different. They are looking at the Iran not having the nuclear weapons. Now Israel also has to be protected. Now, why I say it has to be protected, because if you see the American National Defense Authorization Act of 2027, where they have sought something like $1.15 trillion for the Pentagon budget, there is also a clause there that the two militaries, which is the American military and the IDF, they should be merged. The militaries, the intelligence agencies, when you simplify this, what this means is, merger means that even if the American forces at some stage leave West Asia, then the central command should come under the command of the Israeli prime minister. So when you are so much entrenched, Israel has to be defended. And this is what Netanyahu would have spoken with the US Congress people there and the Israel lobby. Now, as far as the CENTCOM commander is concerned, his problem is that he does not have sufficient destroyers. Because in this 5-month war, what has happened is that many have gone for maintenance. So Pentagon obviously must have approached the American commander for Europe. And there is a statement that has come from the European commander, the American commander, who clearly says that even he is short of destroyers. And destroyers are required. And the reason he is short of destroyers is very simple, that he has to cater for the European theater. Then a lot of these American destroyers, they are there in the naval blockade, which the Americans have put at the Gulf of Oman. So destroyers are key not only to air defense, to integrated air defense. They are also required for the cruise missiles. Let me just unpack this a bit. When we talk of the air defense, integrated air defense, we are talking of the Aegis combat system of the Americans, which is a sufficiently potent system, which has these missiles, which is called the SM-3 and SM-6. Standard Missile 3, which operates in the exo-atmosphere, it can hit the target. It is a missile which is hit to kill. So it operates in the exo-atmosphere. Then the SM-6, it operates in the endo-atmosphere, and it integrates with THAAD. THAAD itself is in short supply. And THAAD in turn then integrates with the Israeli Arrow 2 which operates at the in the endoatmosphere, and Arrow 3, which operates in the exoatmosphere. Then that integrates with David Sling. David Sling, the system that caters for the gap between Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 and the Iron Dome. So the point is, when we are looking at an integrated air defense system, we are looking at a system which caters for the long range, for the medium range, for the short range, and also for the overlapping ranges. The overlapping, so that all this is in very short supply. There is a big problem. Similarly, as far as tomahawks are concerned, this is no secret that they are short of tomahawks also. And tomahawks against are best operated from the destroyers because it's a vertical launch missile, it's a subsonic cruise missile. So that is also a problem. So the point that I am making is, and if you see Israel, how big is Israel? Israel, I mean, Iran is 75 times bigger than Israel. And Israel population is, I think, less than 10 million, some 9.7 million against 93 million of Iran. So the problem here is that the security of Israel also is becoming an issue. Petrodollar is becoming an issue. So today Trump is in a very bad situation. He is in a situation where time is not on his side, because with each passing day the credibility of Americans is going down. Along with that, the war in Europe is not going well. Along with that, they are unable to concentrate in East Asia. Along with that, they are unable to concentrate in Western Hemisphere. So when you look at all this, it becomes very clear that Trump has no option really. Neither can he start the fight, because if he gets into the fight, Iranians don't bluff. Iranians are very clear that they will do tit for tat, of course, because it is their geography. I do not expect them to hit the desalination plants immediately, because all the GCC countries, they are hugely dependent on the desalination plants. But they can, and they have already done a lot of damage of the data centers of the Americans. The Amazon servers have been blown up in Bahrain, in UAE, in Saudi. So all this they have done. And along with that, my last point that I want to make is that whenever there is a combat, one side that is winning, the winning side always remains fixated on its war objective. So the winning side here is Iran, and their war objective is very clear: to get the Americans out of West Asia so that a regional framework can be brought into being, which will then become the step towards solving the Palestinian issue. The other side, which is not winning, resorts to lies, does not want to indulge in diplomacy, does not believe in the international law, does not believe in United Nations, and will always look for distractions. And that is precisely what the Americans have been doing along with the Saudis. For example, hitting the Iraqi militia, they have done that. So this is all distraction, trying to expand the whole thing and not remain fixated, because they are not winning the war. So this, in a nutshell, from my side, Nima, is how I assess the situation today in West Asia.
How do you see the way that we know that it's so difficult to understand the decisions of Donald Trump and the way that he's changing his position every time? But we can find a line of logic within his behavior, which would be the 2 points. One of them is the interceptors, missiles, the shortage of the stockpile in the United States, which is so important, in my opinion, in his assessment. The other point is the oil market and the economy, and how this were going to influence the United States, first of all, then GCC countries, which consequently comes to the United States again, and Israel as well, which is so important. The whole war started because of Israel. And putting these two factors together, in your opinion, which factor gonna force him, after all, to stop the war, or we're not going to have any sort of full stop for the war until he's removed from power, or he's going to be until having the next president in the United States.
See, in my opinion, Nima, the best option today for President Trump is to sit down and negotiate directly with the Iranians, which is possible because Iran does not trust America, but Iran also does not want destruction of West Asia. Because Iran is there, Iran wants to live with the GCC countries. So, therefore, in my opinion, he should sit down with the Iranians seriously and not make a fool of them like he did on the 11th of April, when for 21 hours you see JD Vance and his team, they came to Islamabad and then they walked out. That those things should not happen. Once you sit down, then the key issue today for America, for Trump, is Hormuz. And Hormuz is what the Iranians will not leave. But if they sit down and talk, perhaps, I'm saying perhaps, the Iranians may consider some softer options. While retaining control of the Strait of Hormuz, they may consider some way of doing things. So the point I'm making is this is what he needs to do. Instead, what he is doing is we recently got the reports that now the Americans have put sanctions on the Persian Gulf Strait Authority. Then they have put sanctions on two insurance companies which are associated or aligned with Iran. So all this will not work, because if he is able to work out some sort of a solution with the Iranians, then there is a possibility that he'll be able to save the petrodollars. And petrodollars should be the key that he should be looking at, because he has to not only save petrodollars for the American empire, for his own foreign policy, which is MAGA, Make America Great Again, which of course is a fantasy, but at least America should remain one of the three great powers in the multipolar world. Even that position now is coming down. So that is the least that he should be immediately considering instead of threatening Iran. You cannot threaten a country which is not only winning the war, for which this war is an existential threat. So they will not accept your nonsense and your threats. So this is what I think. He needs to sit down. Diplomacy needs to come back. Mediators are fine, but the mediators can be there. But let's have some serious talks. That is the only way for him to be able to get out of West Asia and save the world economy, and also not become another President Herbert Hoover. I cannot think of any other way, Nima.
I think with the case of the talks, which finally, in my opinion, would be the only way to get out of this chaos that has been created in the region, is that you cannot ignore, the case of, as you've mentioned, Palestine is the most important case in the West Asia, but we have to consider Palestine, Lebanon, and again with the new case of Yemen. I think nobody can ignore Yemen, because they were under tremendous pressure from the United States, from the West, from Saudi Arabia. All of them, they try to do their best to put pressure on Yemen, geopolitically, economically, everything, in each and every aspect. Right now, they're coming out, and that's changing the whole face of the negotiations, if that happens seriously. How do you see that?
So once again, you see here, I believe Field Marshal Asim Munir can play a very big role. He can get President Trump, and certainly from the Iranian side, if Trump thinks that the MOU that he has signed and after that rubbished, is if today the Iranians will go back to the same MOU, I don't think so. What exactly the point that you made, if you see the Article 1 of the Islamabad MOU, which talks about permanent cessation of hostilities on all the front, and the MOU mentions Lebanon, Now the Iranians will amplify this, all the fronts, the resistant front that they talk, and they will bring in Yemen, they will bring in Hezbollah, in any case, Lebanon is there. They will also, in my opinion, bring in the Iraqi Popular Military Force. Even that will be brought in. So the idea is that, as far as the strength of the conventional deterrence of Iran is concerned, Iran will not accept any dilution of that. So all these issues, in other words, the if you see the MOU, it has been left to the mediators to talk much of these things. But now I think it will be the negotiators, the two sides, who will have to talk all these things. And how to bring the two sides together, as I said, efforts are being made by the Qataris, by the Turks, as well as the Pakistanis. But the best bet obviously is the Pakistan army chief, since he has access to the highest levels of both the sides, and the Iranians trust him a lot, which is why the Iranians now have called their MOU Islamabad MOU. So he is in the best position. He has to explain to both the sides, explain to President Trump. And in any case, I'm sure President Trump understands this, that the American economy, as you rightly pointed out, is getting badly affected. The inflation has gone up there. And he should also worry about the data centers which are there in the GCC countries, because they will get blown up. So all these things he has to worry, instead of saying that I will, bomb you to the stone age. The Iranians will do likewise if it is a worst case scenario. They are not compromising, that is for certain. Because as I said, for any Iranian, this is an existential threat. The Iranians are together under the flag. All of them are together, despite whatever differences they have.